Shalom. Shalom to you all. This is Yehudah Glick from Jerusalem, from the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation. That's shalomjerusalem.org. Once again, of course, I always remind you, don't forget you're welcome to watch this video, to share this video, to join shalomjerusalem.org, because that's what we're here for. We're here because we want the word of God from Jerusalem to reach to as many people as possible. We're here because we believe that our mission in this world is to connect and unite the world around God's name, to the place that God chose to rest his divine presence, to rest his reputation in the world, the place which is supposed to be the world's center of faith in God. And today, I concluded on my daily Bible study, I concluded the book of Hosea. The book of Hosea is a very powerful book. It's a book that describes the relationship between the people of Israel and God, from the Exodus from Egypt, throughout all the history until the period we'll be talking about in a second, that Hosea appears. But the story is the relationship between God and his people. And Hosea has very powerful sentences, powerful both on the negative and on the positive. Shalom, Penny from Arkansas. Thank you, Penny. And you're the first one to mention where you're from. I want to remind all you, those who join, you're welcome to join and to tell us where you're from. So once again, Yehudah Glick from Shalom Jerusalem Foundation, shalomjerusalem.org. You're welcome to watch, to share, and join. And today, I want to share with you my thoughts of the book of Hosea. And I was really shaken up when I read the book. Shalom Miriam from the Philippines. I was really shaken up when I read the prophecies in the book of Hosea. First, the beginning, of course, the first 3 chapters of the story that Hosea is told. He's told by God. I'll read it in verse 2. At the beginning, Lord spoke into Hosea. At the beginning, he spoke to Hosea himself personally. And he said to him, go take yourself a wife. Shalom to Zalman from Brooklyn. Hosea chapter 1, God says to Hosea, go take yourself a wife of Hanatri and children of Hanatri, for the land goes astray from the following the Lord. God is telling Hosea, you are to marry a wife that her behavior represents betrayal. Her behavior represents something that is totally against what God believes in, because this is what's supposed to represent what the relationship between God and the people of Israel. Shalom Marcus from Germany. And we're talking about Hosea is prophesizing at the years of the end of the time of the Israelite kingdom. I want to remind you all, the Israelite kingdom was divided into 2, Israel and Judah. The Judah dynasty continued on another 100 years after Israel. And Hosea is talking at the end of the years of the kingdom of Israel, of Ephraim. And he says, God says to Hosea, go take a wife of Hanatri. Because this is the relationship between God and his people. Sounds terrible. It sounds terrible. And he has to go and have 3 children with her. He goes and takes Gomer ben Divlaim. And only the first one does it say that she conceived and bore him a son. The other 2, it doesn't say they're born for him. The first one is called Israel. And God said he's going to punish the household of Yehu for what went on in Israel. We're not going to get into that because we're really doing a real bird's eye study today on the book of Hosea. Then he says 2 more children. The daughter, her name is Lo Ruchama. Lo Ruchama means I will not have mercy. I will not continue to grant clemency to the house of Israel. But I will mete out their portion to them. And then he has a son, Shalom, Israel, Ari, wherever you're from. We'd be happy if you always mention where you're from. And God says, and the third one, not lo ami, not my nation, because they are not my people. And this is the life of the marriage between God and the people of Israel. I want to remind you, a marriage begins at a wedding, but it has to be strengthened, enforced, empowered throughout the years of marriage. Our sages tell us all beginnings are difficult. It's referring to the first years of marriage, because the first year of marriage is a time that you have a lot of challenges, a lot of obstacles, and our job is to take the life of marriage and strengthen it. And here God says the wedding begins from the exodus from Egypt, begins from the signing of the covenant at Sinai, but that was, of course, the time of the wedding. That was not the marriage. When God's saying to Hosea, the marriage between me and the people of Israel has gone the wrong way. It became a marriage of betrayal. It became a marriage of what we said before. It became of a harlotry, and God is now telling him to do it. But then it goes on in chapter 2. He has to take another one. And God says, first at the chapter, first sentence, God says, okay, I want you to understand. I want you to tell you the story from the beginning. At the beginning, they were my people. But they fought with me. And what happened? And this is what happened. God said, she received, in verse 10, she did not know that I was the one who gave her the grain, Shalom Anita from Ireland. She did not know I was the one that gave her the corn, the wine, and the oil. What is the story? The story is that God was feeding the people of Israel. God was feeding her all the food, and she went around to the other men, to the lovers, and she was offering them, show how much she had, and they all wanted her. Then suddenly, it stops. There's no more source of substance. And what happens? All the lovers leave her. Because they weren't loving her, they were loving the food that she had. She forgot that God was the one who had given her the food. And God says, therefore I will return and take my grain, my wine, and my it's time, and my wine is appointed season, and I will separate my wool and my flax to cover her nakedness. God wants to save her, but she went ahead to the others. And God says, and therefore I will lay waste her vines and her fig trees, concerning which she said, they are my hire, which my lovers have given to me. God says, no, I gave them to you. Now, what happens? What happens when this kind of marriage reaches a point of such a crisis? And she wants to go back to her first husband. She wants to go back. As it says in verse 9, she says, I will go and return to my first husband. There actually could be two options. Option one would be that he would say, no, you betrayed me. You cheated on me. I don't want you. Shalom from Honduras. The option number one when a marriage reaches a point of crisis is the husband says, I'm not interested anymore. I don't trust you anymore. Go away. Option number two we can think of. The exact opposite. The husband says, oh, she learned her lesson. Now she knows that I'm the origin of whatever it comes from. But Hosea teaches us the third option. And the third option that Hosea says appears in chapter 3. Listen carefully what Hosea says. Hosea says, listen, the situation is not, you can't go, we have to go back to a different situation. In the end of chapter 2, what does she say? And I will remove the names of the Baalim from her mouth. She separates herself from the other lovers. But what's going on? And here we have to read in chapter 2, verse 16. Therefore, behold, I will allure her and lead her into the desert. She will be going back to the life of the desert. What was the life of the desert? The life of the desert was a situation where they had relationship, but it was not able to live in the house. They were not able to live in marriage. And that's what he says to her. He says to her, listen carefully. You will be my recognized lover, my recognized wife, but you will not be in my house. You have to go back to the time of engagement, to the time of the beginning of marriage, and start the whole thing from before. He doesn't say, okay, we'll forgive everything. He doesn't say, I will shalom to Shalin. He does not say, I'm going to divorce her. He says, I'm going to send her back to the life of the desert. And there she will be. Yes, she'll call me back. She'll call me Ishi, my man, not my husband. And we will re-begin the whole thing. But we have to go back to the situation of betroth. We have to go back to the situation where the love cannot yet be implemented. This is a very important concept that appears throughout the Torah in many different ways. The idea that you go back to a situation where you have to take a recess. For instance, the sabbatical year of the land. God gives you land, and it's part of the covenant between God and the land. Once every 7 years, you go back to living in a situation of relationship with the land, but you can't work the land. You can't feed the land. You can't fertilize the land. You can't grow from the land. Why? Leave go for a second. Leave go and remember not to take things for granted. And so here God says, we have to go back to the situation of betroth, the situation of desert. As Jeremiah says in chapter 2, I remember the time when you were in the desert. We were not like a married couple yet. I didn't bring you into my house yet. We announced our couplehood, but it was not yet a formal marriage. And it'll be a long time. And I will betroth you with righteousness, with justice, with loving kindness, but not yet a marriage. And then he says here in chapter 3, and I said to her, verse 3, you shall remain as mine for many days. You shall not play the harlot. You should not belong to another man, and so will I be towards you. Meaning the betroth is now going to be a long time. And that's what God says in verse 4. For the children of Israel shall remain for many days, having neither king, nor prince, nor sacrifice, nor pillar, nor ephod, nor teraphim. The situation of exile, of thousands of years of exile, is described right over here. You have to go back to a period of being in the desert. Shalom. You have to go back. Shalom to Linda from Norway. You have to go back to the situation of exile for many, many years. For many years. Afterwards, the children of Israel shall return and seek the Lord their God. So these 3 chapters, the first 3, Shalom, Aaron from Liberia, Shalom. The first 3 chapters in the book of Hosea are a story between Hosea, the prophet, and God, and he taking a wife and separating from the wife and understanding that the life of betrayal cannot continue, but you have to go back to a situation where you're not yet a married couple for many, many years. Only at the end of that, in verse 5, at the end, afterwards the children of Israel shall return seek the Lord their God and David their king, and they shall come trembling to the Lord and to his goodness at the end of days. The end of days, after many, many years of living back in the wilderness of the desert, after living back in a situation of betroth, then you will be able to express the marriage. These are the first 3 chapters of Hosea. But then come on, chapter 4 to chapter 14 of Hosea. And here, that whole story that happens between the prophet and his wives now goes into prophecy using the most difficult words, using the strongest words in the negative form and in the positive form. God begins in chapter 4, 5, and 6 describing the terrible behavior of the people of Israel, betraying the marriage. That's what happens. Listen to the strong words. Hear the word of Lord in chapter 4. Children of Israel, for the Lord has a controversy with the inhabitants of the land. For there is neither truth, nor loving kindness, nor knowledge of God. There is swearing and lying and killing and stealing and committing adultery. They break all the boundaries, and blood touches blood. God here doesn't start. The prophecy here is very careful. They're not going between the lines. No politically correct here. Hosea says to the people exactly, and therefore the land will mourn. And he says again, even the prophets don't exist, and the priests don't exist, and therefore they shall eat and not be satisfied because they're committing harlotry and wine. Again and again, he's repeating the relationship between the people of Israel and God is a situation of harlotry, of betrayal. And he's using these strong, very, very strong words in chapter 4 and chapter 5. He says it, they betrayed the Lord, chapter 5, verse 7. And Ephraim will be wildered to the day of contention. And Ephraim is plundered. And Ephraim will see its ailment. And he says, I will go away, return to my place. And this appears again and again. But in chapter 6, she wants to go back home to God. Come, let us return to the Lord, for he is torn and he shall heal us. Let's go back to God. We want to go back to God. The prophet says, no. It doesn't happen just like one day or two. He will revive us from 2 days and 3rd day. No. God says, what should I do to you? What should I do to you? For I desire loving kindness and not sacrifices. What is he saying? He's saying your return to God is it's like in verse 3 in chapter 6, and let us know in verse 4, what should I do, friend? What should I do? For your loving kindness is like the morning cloud and like the dew that passes away early. You know, when you wake up in the morning, you see everything's wet, you think, it's going to be a wet day. And it's only dew and it disappears. Like the morning cloud. You can't play games, God says. You can't go back to God thinking that everything's going to be forgotten in one day. This is exactly what we spoke about in chapter 1, 2, and 3. God says, you can't, God, I don't want to divorce you, but we're not remarrying as if nothing happened. We are going to a long period of exile. We're going into a long period of exile. And these descriptions continue and continue and continue. But we have one point in chapter 11 where God can't hold himself. And he shows his love. And when, just like Isaiah doesn't save words when he's talking about the anger of God, he uses the most beautiful words when he talks about the love of God. For when Israel was young, I loved him. And he says, I sent to train Ephraim. I picked up Israel. I grazed her on my hands. I picked her up in my arms. I embraced her. I took care of the people of Israel. And I promise they will not go back to Egypt. And I won't be able to punish them. I can't get rid of them completely. So what eventually will happen? And then the eventual will happen is the final chapter of the book of Hosea. Hosea 14. Where God says, okay, now we've reached the end of days. Shuva Yisrael, return, O Israel, to the Lord your God, for you have stumbled in your iniquity. Take word with yourself, return to the Lord. Now we can start beginning and rebuilding. Now we have come back home to the house. God has opened his doors, and the people have come back home to the land. Erpa meshuvatam, I will heal their backsliding. I will love them freely. I will be like dew to Israel, and this time the word dew comes from in the positive aspect. They will blossom like a rose, and they will strike roots like Lebanon. Lebanon here is repeated 3 times, like the aroma, the fragrance like Lebanon, the wine of Lebanon. Shalom Joe Rodriguez, the wine of Lebanon. The Lebanon is as the white mountain representing the house of the Lord. Lebanon is one of the names of the Temple Mount. It is, as it says in Psalms, like the power, like the dew of Hermon going down to the mountain of Zion. Or as Moses said, the beautiful mountain, Hahar HaTov Hazeh Lebanon. Lebanon, the white, is a name representing the Temple Mount. And God says it again and again. Who is wise and will understand this? Who is wise and discerning, and who I will know them? For those are the ways of the Lord are straight. God says to the people of Israel, when I bring you back home to your land, we can start the whole thing from the beginning. But there are no shortcuts. And we know that. We went through 2,000 years of exile. We know that very carefully. We know that there are all the obstacles. We went through the Spanish Inquisition. We went through the Roman period. We went through the Holocaust. We went through so much hate. And God kept us in this situation. It's a situation of a relationship, but not being able to live up to the relationship. And this was the situation. But now we've reached Hosea 14, where God says, at the end of the days, you will come back home. And you will come back to Lebanon, to the Mount of Zion. You will come back to the Mount of the Temple. And you will come back, we will be building a house of worship, a house of connection. It will be not just a wedding, it will be a marriage. And now we're living in those days where we see it happening. We see the people of Israel returning back home. And now it's our mission to once again understand that the people of Israel are to come back home for one purpose: to announce the reputation of God in the world. The people of Israel come back home to call upon the nations to connect to God. The terrible suffering years of Hosea, we went through them already. And now we're in the description of the love of God to the people of Israel, an unconditioned love, a love that cannot be separated, a love that can only be expressed from the deepest, deepest parts of the love between God and the people of Israel. Because the success of the people of Israel is sanctifying God's name. Shalom David Alexander. The success of the people of Israel in its economy, in its in technology, in the wisdom, these are all not thanks to us, it's thanks to God. And they're there, we receive them so that we shall announce God's name in the world. As Abraham did when he came to the land, he went around all over and he was calling the name of God, not calling to God. He was announcing to the world, look, when I defeated Abimelech, when I defeated Pharaoh, when I defeated the kings, this was not me, Abraham says. This was God. This was the Lord. It was the victory of Israel in our time. Today is the 1st of July. We're supposed to start implementing the plan of the announcement of the sovereignty of Israel over the land. Shalom Beverly from Texas. Today, as the 1st of July, we were supposed to announce the sovereignty of Israel over Judea and Samaria. There's a bit of a delay. We hope it'll take a few more days. But President Trump's plan of the century is another step in the process of the return of the people of Israel to the land as part of the return of the covenant between God and his people, so that we should be the wagon, we should be the chariot, the carrying the name of God in the world. That the world should look at us and say, wow, this is the people of God. And we carry the reputation of God in the world. And this is what it's all about. It's not a political issue. It's not an issue between countries. It's an issue between God and the people of his chosen land, chosen people, his chosen land, his chosen city of Jerusalem. And it's for the sake of the world recognizing the land, recognizing the God of Israel, the one and only God. It's for the sake of the world recognizing God. As God said back to Jerusalem, it's a place I chose to rest my name there. Meaning to rest my reputation there, to rest my existence in the world. That's where the reign of God begins. And this is what Hosea tells us. He says it's not going to be easy. It's not a simple process. Shalom Osnat from Papua. It's not an easy process. We have today people from Papua, from Texas, from Kansas, from Norway, from Netherlands, from Honduras, from Northern Ireland, from Germany, from Brooklyn, from Philippines, from Arkansas. So many wonderful people with us today from all over the world. It's so wonderful to see. Because here, shalom to Hosea, where are you from? Tell us where you're from. It's here that we should share this message with all humanity. It's here that we should share this message with all humanity. And that's the idea. The blessing of God to his people as priests of the world, as a kingdom of priests of the world, are not for the sake of the people of Israel. Alberto from Florida, shalom. They're not for the sake of the people of Israel, but for the sake of God's name in the world. And they're for the sake of announcing God's name. And when we are here, calling upon all of you to join the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation movement, by going into shalomjerusalem.org, by sharing these teachings, we're actually saying, guys, the time has come for the prophecies of Hosea, of the return of God to his people, of the rebuilding the covenant. As the days are here. And now it's in our hands. We can't wait for God to do it. God is waiting for us to do it. We can't wait for a Messiah to come. We have to bring and do it, and God's waiting for us to do it. This is the concept. God promises, if we will do that, if we will return to him, if we will truthfully, sincerely return to the covenant of God, not as we did in chapter 6 of Hosea. We said, oh, we'll do it 1 day, 2 days, and it's like the morning cloud. But we return by taking upon ourselves the responsibility. Then we can once again express the marriage between God and his people. Then we can once again express not just like was in the desert, but like was in the Garden of Eden. So I'm calling upon you all, go into shalomjerusalem.org, join the massive movement that we're leading in the world, and you will see so many more miracles happening in our times. And if you are part of it, we are here, agents of change in the world. We are agents of change in the world. Agents of uniting the world around the one and only God. We have to do it. We're going through difficult times. God wanted us to stop our running up to make ourselves a name, like the people of Babylon did in the Tower of Babel. The anti-temple, the power of Babel is the anti-temple. But we are obligated to build the temple, not make a name for ourselves, not to make a name for our descendants to see how great we are, but to make a name of God in the world, to announce his reputation, to announce his kingdom in the world. That's what the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation movement is all about, because Jerusalem is the foundation of our faith. So once again, thank you so much, Alberto and Jose and Osnat and Beverly and David and Joe and Aaron and Linda and Charlene and Nelly and Lynn. I forgot to mention Aaron from Liberia and Neil van der Vorst from Netherlands and Walter from Honduras and Anita from Northern Ireland and Israel, Ari and Marcus from Germany and Valman from Brooklyn and Miriam from Philippines and Penny from Arkansas. Every one of you, you are the agent of change. You are part of this change that we're making in the world. So once again, from Jerusalem, I send you the love of God. I send you the blessings of Aaron, the blessings of God to all nations, and he shall bless us all as the conductor of the orchestra finds place for every one of those instruments in the beauty of God. And Shalom Elizabeth from Sweden. And God is the conductor. He's the menatzeach on this wonderful harmony, on this wonderful orchestra. And he is there. Shalom Charlie from West Virginia, yes. And Shalom Fernanda, where are you from? Tell us where you're from. And this is the concept. The concept is coming out the message from Jerusalem that we are here not just for the sake of ourselves, but we're part of a movement of agents of change, part of a movement of shalomjerusalem.org, Shalom Jerusalem Foundation movement, of making the change in the world. And this is the concept of building a temple, which the temple is also the place that God chooses to rest his divine presence. Shalom, Ann Arbor from Michigan. Shalom to all of you. I'm so happy that you all joined us. It's always this moment of that we have to finish is always one of the most difficult times for us. But I'm going back on Monday to Temple Mount. You can join us live from Temple Mount. We'll be making more prayers there on Temple Mount. Prayers that God should succeed, that we should succeed, and that all of those who are connected to his word and to his covenant will be able to succeed in being agents of change and being flames in his menorah to bring his light to all over the world, to all corners of the world. So thank you all for joining. Thank you all for studying. Tomorrow I will be beginning the book of Joel. The book comes after Hosea, and it's very exciting. There's so much in this book. There's so much in this book. There's so much in this book. The relationship between God and his people and God and humanity. There's so much in this book. I just can't stop reading and connecting and turning it part of our life. So once again, you're all very, very dear to me. I am so excited when you come and join, and I want to send you, every one of you, my blessings. And we love you all. Shalom from Jerusalem.